Hello, my name is CIIIIRCLE, and today we're going to talk about Battlefield, Call of Duty, and the Circle of Life. I was going to actually sing that bit myself, but it was a lot easier to just stick the clip in, because it would have sounded dreadful if I'd done it. So what got me thinking about this was the Call of Duty World 2 announcement, or World War 2 announcement, if you want to be not an idiot about it. And I'm actually both happy and cynical / skeptical about the change in direction for the Call of Duty franchise. Both Battlefield and Call of Duty, I think, definitely needed to make a change. They'd started out well enough. They started out with the games that everyone, started playing them for. They were in those settings originally, and that was great. That worked well back in the olden days. They moved away from that, though. Battlefield got very, very comfortable in its modern military setting, and I think it's kind of telling that the only thing Battlefield could think to do was to just go sideways instead of forwards. Call of Duty, I can at least respect for the fact that they tried to push it forwards. They went into kind of faux sci-fi territory. Near future, where stuff was different enough that you could justify shooting people in space, and yet was not far away enough from the modern military setting that you were, some sort of laser god or something. I think they tried. It didn't work very well, especially in the case of Infinite Warfare, which people seem to genuinely dislike. I have to admit, I didn't play it myself, but that dislike ratio on the trailer, that is a thing of legend at this point. It is staggering how many people were not happy with that announcement. Battlefield, rather than attempting to push the envelope, they just sort of lounged around in the modern setting, and then eventually just went on a massive, ridiculous, bizarre tangent, and just went, it's cops and robbers now. Which remains, to me, one of the most baffling and silly decisions I think I've ever seen a large franchise make. And I know large franchises have done dumb stuff in the past, but just taking Battlefield, reskinning it to cops and robbers, and then just going, there you go. Was that not what you were after? When you kept asking us to go back to the roots of the series, you mean you weren't talking about having robbers with bazookas stealing money out of a safe in a bank, whilst heavily armed hordes of policemen tried to shoot them in the head? You mean you weren't referring to that? Oh, my bad, I misunderstood. It was mental. Like, having got a bit of distance on it, I really want people to appreciate how fucking insane that was. To break that streak of Battlefield 2, 3 and 4, and then just go, cops and robbers, innit? Crazy. Call of Duty, their attempt to push it a little bit, to take it into near sort of future sci-fi territory, I can respect that, even though some of the stuff they put in the game seemed a bit mental. I mean, my standout Call of Duty was Modern Warfare. Not Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 1. So when I'm seeing clips of people firing weird, laser guns and having exosuits, and I think, was it Blops 2 that had the tomahawk you could just throw, and the knife that you fired out of the hilt? That was a bit off to me, but, people seem to be mildly receptive, even if they weren't 100% on board. But at some point, everything had to change, because you cannot just leave a series in a single setting and hope that people keep buying it. Battlefield was starting to see a decline in sales. Call of Duty was starting to see a decline in sales, and you can see why. Because although the games were changing the numbers on the end and changing the titles, the actual gameplay itself wasn't being altered all that much. It was getting a little bit stale. And even Call of Duty, at some point, is going to succumb to becoming a little bit stale, despite the fact that people seem to buy it no matter what the hell is going on. So it had to change. And the change is what makes me kind of, I don't know, I can't really put it into words. It's excited and disappointed at the same time. Because the solution to people getting sick of the way things are now with the series, the solution to people getting tired of the way the games are now, the fact that they were modern military or near future in sci-fi kind of tinged, is to just go right the way back to exactly where they started and just do it all over again. Now, admittedly, yes, there are some differences, and I know things have changed in that time. Technically, Battlefield didn't actually have a World War 1 game before, because they started in 1942, but it's still that cycle, that little circle And here's what I'm genuinely a little bit concerned about, even though I am 99% sure this is what's going to happen. So, Battlefield went World War One, right? They went all the way back to like the start of the 1900s. It wasn't really all the way back because in the grand scale of history, that far isn't that far, but you get what I mean. They went back to very close to their roots. Call of Duty's gone back to World War Two. They've gone back to their roots as well. What does this mean for the next few releases of Battlefields and Call of Duties? Well, we're just going to see the same settings, aren't we? It's going to be exactly the same as it was before. Except now, people are going to be like, oh, I'm so glad they're sticking with this. I'm so glad they're sticking with it. Because when they were sticking with the modern military side of things, no, not good enough. We don't like that. We don't like it. Get that shit out of it. We want to go back. We want to go back to World War One, back to World War Two. Now that we're in World War One and World War Two, people are going to be a lot happier. And that makes me laugh because it's just the same stuff. It's this crazy thing that happens in the entertainment industry as a whole when you look at things like, especially when you look at films at the moment. It's just remake after remake. It's crazy how many remakes have been going on over the last few years. This is the same. This is genuinely the same. Now, the difference is that people have been really asking for this stuff. And in a way, I think Battlefield, Call of Duty, it remains to be seen because, the game isn't out yet. So, although their cycle has started, they started in that area, they've gone back to that era. Although that cycle has started, it's going to be a bit harder to tell whether they do significant changes to gameplay, like truly significant changes to gameplay, because the formula for Call of Duty has been very, very, very similar for a long time, as has the formula for Battlefield. Now, the way that Battlefield did it was both the best and the worst way, because Battlefield, of course, went back to World War One, except it's really not that different. The established Battlefield formula has not changed, really. People have said that it's more like Battlefront than Battlefield now, but the fact is you've still got capture points, you've still got the same sort of mechanics that we've seen for God knows how many iterations of that title, and it's going to be interesting to see if Call of Duty go the same way, because what Battlefield have done is change the setting without really changing anything else. Yes, I know you don't have quite as many automatic weapons, and obviously vehicles are a bit different. But when you play Battlefield 1, it's not like you're sitting there going, oh my god, this is literally 100% different to any other Battlefield I've ever played before. This is unrecognisable. The format has changed so much. It's still a first-person shooter, but everything is so different, so fresh, so new. It's like a brand new experience. It's not. It's really not. One of the things I like about Battlefield 1 is that it is so familiar whilst being in a fresh setting. And they've refreshed the setting without necessarily having to really refresh the gameplay. Now, if Call of Duty goes the same route, then what are we going to see in the future? Like, what do you think we're going to see? Well, we're going to see mild increments, aren't we? We're going to see different theatres of war in the same time period. We're not going to be shifting into the future like Call of Duty did, as in from here, future, not from 1942 to the future. We're just going to be seeing incremental changes in terms of where the battles take place, which theatre of war we're in. You might find things like Vietnam being reintroduced, stuff like that. And eventually people are going to get sick of it. And this is the thing that makes me laugh and the thing that I like about this. There will come a time, due to the way that these things work, due to the way that, new people are being born all the time, you've got different generations growing up with different versions of these franchises, there will come a time where there will be people who sit there and go, guys, the World War One, World War Two stuff is okay, but it's getting old and it's getting boring. Can you go back to doing modern military stuff? Because that's what we grew up with. That's what we like. We like the modern military stuff, and you haven't done it for ages. And it's just going to cycle round again. And the thing that I really like about this, in a way, all of these old titles are available. So you could feasibly, in say, I don't know, give it 5-10 years, look at Battlefield 1, and then be faced with another version of Battlefield in World War 1. Because that's how things have gone. When you look at the list of releases, specifically for Battlefield right now, but we'll have a look at the Call of Duty one in a minute. We start off Battlefield 1942, and then what did we? And that was in what, 2002, and then we go to 2017, and we're in Battlefield 1. We've done the loop. We've done the full loop, and Call of Duty is going to look very, very similar. It's that genuine, amazing circle of life where you start off in that one specific place. People love it. They stick with the franchise. You move it on, and then in a few years' time, we'll get cries, we'll get complaints, we'll get people telling us that this shit is old, that we've seen it before, that we do not need another World War I or World War II game. Could you please go back to modern military? And on that day, I shall laugh because it'll just be exactly the same conversation over and over. Now, is this going to apply to other franchises? I actually don't know. I mean, things like Command & Conquer as a franchise is pretty much dead now. There's nothing going on there. Stuff like the Dawn of War series is kind of exempt from it in a way, unless you went back to the Horus Heresy. Sports games are just completely irrelevant to the conversation because, well, they're sports games. They're always going to be exactly the same. You're not going to see FIFA 1992 hit the shelves anytime soon because people don't care. It feels like, especially, like, really focusing down, it feels like Battlefield and Call of Duty are the two series that are the ones caught in a cycle, in a loop, where they started one place, they're returning to that place, and give it a few years, they will have to go back to what people were complaining about a few years ago because they'll be sick of the fact that they went back to where they started in the first place. And I can't really, off the top of my head, think of another series that has that sort of problem. At least not like a huge, global success series, not one of the big players like Battlefield or Call of Duty is. It's just crazy to think about. And it's going to be really, really interesting to see where it heads, to see whether in 5 or 6 years' time we do have those complaints. But what I want to ask you is, do you think the same? Do you think they're going to be stuck in this loop, this ridiculous cycle of having to go back and back and back to what they were before just to keep going? Do you think they'll fold at any point where sales will just collapse and it won't be worth making anymore? Or do you think they'll manage to keep reinventing themselves just enough to keep people interested, but without necessarily having to tread any new ground? I really want to know what you think. And also, what do you reckon of Call of Duty going back to World War II? Will it just depend on how the game is, or are you on board? With them going back a bit, are you on board with Call of Duty again? Or are you not convinced? I'd be interested to find out because I'm not sure either way at the moment. I want to hear other people's opinions about it. Leave your comment in the comment section below. I always read them every time because I'm a sucker for punishment. And, well, if you like that video, like the video. There's a link to another one, probably somewhere around here. There'll be links plastered all over this area. There's also a subscribe button and a link to my Patreon page if you want to check it out. But you don't have to, it's up to you. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Toodaloo.